Just a quick tutorial to cover some of the basic healing brush tools and the cloning tool and how they can work with the selection or kind of a mask, whether it's temporary or permanent that you've applied. By now I'm sure you've already seen videos that talk about all the spot healing brush tool, the healing brush tool, the patch tool, and the clone tool, which are the most common ones that we use for fairly small areas to be able to repair an image or alter how it looks. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on her. The easiest one to use, especially for small objects, is to come over in here and use the spot healing brush tool. This one normally works best if you obviously use a brush size that's slightly bigger than the object without it being too big. So this is too big for me to try to attack this thing. I wouldn't want to try to go though and get a brush that was the exact size of the object. So somewhere just a little bit bigger would be better. All the tools under the healing brush, they have the effect that when you actually use them and you're done, it kind of blurs the edges to try to blend it in with the background. And that's great. That's something that has been added to those that wasn't in the original cloning tool that has been in Photoshop for a long time. The healing ones are fantastic. They work great on skin. They work great on things that are soft. Suggestion though, when it kind of blurs the edges, if you're doing this on top of a really hard object that has distinct lines, car windows, building windows, brick patterns and things like that, that slight fuzziness it adds at the end, which is so great on top of skin, actually ends up leaving you a lot of smudges, which means there's definitely a time and place still to go back and use the clone tool. But I'm going to use the spot healing brush tool. I'm just going to click and it goes ahead and gets rid of that object. I can use that on down here where she has all these flyaway hairs that nobody removed from the image. I can just push and hold and I can drag across some of them. Problem I run into there though is that I actually was so close to the white that when it was looking for the area to be able to blend around the background that it didn't know any better and it extended that on down into the picture. So I'm going to back up a bit and I'm just going to try to see if I can click it. Nope, same thing's happening. So if that's the case, that's when I come back over here and I add the healing brush tool, which is now a tool very much like the clone tool. If I accidentally try to click it on the page and I haven't made a source, I get this option. Option click to define a source point to be used to repair the image, which is the exact same area you get in the clone tool if you haven't done this yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at her arm. I see kind of a shadow along the edge, and I see an area down in here that's much lighter the further we get away from just the edge of her shoulder. So to get rid of this, I need to kind of option click over here, and then come back and try to drag right across that area. I'm going to option click on the quieter area, and I'm going to end up, now I can end up pulling down since I'm further away from that. And I can use this kind of following that diagonal line of her arm, which is shadow at the top, kind of lighter colored skin right here. If I'm concerned about hitting these and the preview's even starting to show it's going to pull the white in from the edge, I can make the brush much smaller, because just remember, it has to be bigger than the object you're getting rid of, but it doesn't have to be much bigger than that. So if I trace this pattern down here and option click here and drag across this, you can see the little plus symbol. I'll do that up here, just so that you can see it better. The little plus symbol is where it's pulling the color from. The circle is where it's going to actually end up replacing it. So I could move in here to get rid of more of that. I'm using the space bar to move over. I'm going to go back and just use the original spot healing brush tool to just click to get rid of that, click to get rid of that. If I'd felt the need because I was getting so close to this crease in her smile that that individual tool was pulling some of the shadow in, again, I could go back and get the healing brush tool, which would have made me come up here and hold down the option button to be able to go ahead and attack that. So again, in case this particular freckle right here I thought was getting too close to this crease, I could option click over here and click to pull the color in from. Same type of thing on her forehead. If I was trying to get rid of some of these, I could potentially use the spot healing brush, but if I'm too close to some of the other lines or this area where the shadow's starting to pop up on her head, I'd end up having to come back and use the healing brush tool. So to get rid of this line, I'm going to option click down here and walk this across here. Option click here to get that. Option click here to pull across there, etc. So I could even do that if I wanted to thin down her eyebrows slightly or something like that. The clone tool is great because it's used in very much the same way as this last one, the healing brush tool. It just doesn't do the little circular ring where it fuzzies the edge after it's done. So again, on a soft area like this, it may not always be the best tool to use. To get rid of some of the tattoo on her arm, that'd be pretty simple because I could use any of those. I'm going to option click just even on the old-fashioned clone tool. On that one, I'm going to make sure that the brush is reasonably soft. If I option click here, and again try to stay in the same diagonal line as your skin tone, shadow here, lighter area up here, option click, push and hold, drag across those, option click, now I'm at about where the shadow starts, drag across those. I could be using just probably the small spot healing brush or the healing brush for being able to do this as well. Problem's going to run into though is especially when I get to the very edge of the page. Even if I'm option clicking from over here, the minute I start to let go right about this point, it's going to go ahead, and that didn't look so bad, it's going to start to pull in some white. So one thing that you might want to end up doing is this. Go get the quick selection tool, make a very rough mask just on her arm. If you need to, because the scan's low res, hit refine edges, tell it to smooth a little bit. Could end up doing something like that if I wanted to. But in this case, if I'm using the clone or any of the other tools right now, and I option click and I push up to that line, it's not going to be able to bring any of the white in because I've selected the arm. I have no intention of saving this mask. I'm going to throw it away. I'm just using it to help protect my cloning area as I'm doing this. Same type of principle would apply if I want to get rid of her bracelets. If I come in here and use the selection tool to grab her arm, and then I come back and I zoom in and I switch to the quick mask mode and I go get black paint to extend the mask. And I'm going to want a harder brush for this and probably even a little bit smaller. And remember, I can change this tool to work kind of in a straighter line if I'm concerned about wiggling up and down by holding the shift button down and attacking that area right there like that. I'm going to move down and I'm going to do the same thing down here. I want to make sure I flip this ink so I can either hit the switcher button, or to flip very quickly between the foreground and background I can just hit the X button. And if I'm painting with white paint down here, I'm going to get rid of the mask, and I want to delete this part of the mask down in here. And I probably should spend a little bit more time making sure that the mask is okay, but still relatively. I'm going to get rid of the edge of this string. Once I've decided that that's okay, hit Q to get out of the quick mask. And again, now when I come back in here and I try to use whether it's the spot healing brush or just the plain old clone tool, I could actually zoom in. I'm protecting myself for bringing the white in. So if I was to option click here and move kind of straight across in that diagonal pattern of her arm, I can push the clone up to the edge of the page. But I'm not going to extend into the background. Same kind of thing down here. I see this little kind of line along in here. I'm going to option click here. Wait till the brush matches up. I'm going to push and hold, and I'm going to pull down. To get rid of that other part of the string, I'm going to option click here, move to about here, and I'm going to pull down. And then when I'm done getting rid of that part of the bracelet, easiest thing to do is for me to go select inverse, which is Command-Shift-I, probably a command you're going to want to memorize in Photoshop. So if I hold down Command-Shift-I, it's not going to look a whole lot different from here, but if I zoom out, I can see marching ants at the edge of the page. What that means is right now I have everything but the arm selected. So if I knew that the background was white, I could just use the paintbrush and paint white to get rid of this, or I could still come back in and use the cloning tool. Option click down here, and I can walk the jewelry right up to that point, and I'm not going to have to worry about being precise on the edge of her arm. Option click here, drag across that. So when I'm done, I basically have this. Now, there's a couple of other tools that I could have used. I might have been able to use the edit, fill, content aware, except her arm's pretty small. I definitely could have used the patch tool, but we're going to see that in the video with the dogs on the beach. So we'll leave that for now. If I wanted to get rid of these earrings on her face, there's not much detail in the hair, so the same type of thing. I can hit Command D to select the existing mask, get the quick selection tool. I need to mask her face. I could care less what it looks like all over her face. All I need it to do is to protect her face alongside this earring, and maybe over here on this side to be able to protect part of her earlobe and everything. So I don't care what this top looks like. I'm going to hit Q. I'm going to go get white paint. D to reset the block, X to move that color to the top. I'm going to paint that I don't want to include the earring in this particular mask. I can go back in and turn that off and on to see what this area right in here looks like. But now that I have her face selected, I'm going to hit Q, and rather than protecting her face, I'm going to hit Command-Shift-I to get the inverse. And that means that I will not be able to encroach into her face area. And so I'm just going to get rid of this real quick. I could go get the cloning tool, start down here in the hair. I can see that there's kind of a diagonal pattern here, so I'm going to try to match that. Option click down here, and then I'm going to slowly move up. Slowly move up. And if I'm worried about this area in here overflowing, I'm just going to move to a much smaller brush and just be careful where my sample's coming from. But if I was to do this, I can easily come back in here with just a few clicks and get rid of that earring. If I wanted to kind of keep this area where the white is coming through, I could click right here and then attack this very bottom part of the earring right in there to still make sure that's a part of it. And then I see one more faint ghosted part of it. And I could do the same thing to get rid of the other earring. So selections are used for knocking objects out, but they're also used in the cloning process to help make your life easier so that you can more quickly access what you want and not have to worry about accidentally smudging something at the edge where things like this intersect.